So, welcome to Quantum Author, where you're going to become the author that you already are. Over the next 2 hours, we are going to take a bold leap forward on the timeline where you are a published, successful author, plus learn all that it takes to get to that point from where you are now. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lilly Penhall, and I've been in the publishing industry for over 17 years. I started working with self-publishing in 2009 when my mom wrote her first book and asked me to design and publish it. And since then, I've worked with more than 20 authors to publish more than 50 books, each unique and customized to the author. So I also spent 5 years in the design department at the world's largest spiritual publishing house and learned so much about traditional publishing while I was there. And many of my private authors are bestsellers, award winners, world-renowned coaches and teachers, and successful speakers. So I'm super excited to share everything that I've learned with you over my publishing career. Because working with such successful, conscious, and spiritual authors has given me a lot of wisdom about the creative process. But what I'm going to share with you today can also be applied universally to anything that you want to accomplish in life. So, here is our agenda for today. We are going to talk about becoming an author and what that really means. And then we are going to discuss what a quantum shift is and how that is going to help you become your author self. After that, we will take the actual leap into that timeline with a guided journey. And finally, I will give you my most valuable, most guarded tips for everything about writing a book, from planning, writing, editing, publishing, and launching your book, all from my many years of experience, including time for Q&A where I can answer everything that you want to know. So I do recommend that you have a journal ready for later, something to sip on, and a quiet place to do the quantum shift if possible, which will take about 20 minutes to do. That'll be a little bit later, like I said. Oh, amazing. Welcome, welcome. Um, I welcome the next person who arrived on our chat today and on our call today. And I did already get started a little bit, but there's going to be a replay, so you can always watch the beginning. I basically was just introducing myself and what we're going to be doing today and kind of the agenda. So we will, like I said, want to have a journal and something to sip on, and then a quiet place to do the quantum shift if possible. So I just wanted to reiterate that for Kyla, who just came on. So if you're here, you probably want to write a book, right? That's the whole reason that we're here. So, you know, if you're here to write a book, just tell me, yes, that's me. Obviously, I'm here to write a book, right? Um, but you've probably been thinking about this for a while, right? You probably said out loud, man, I could write a book about that. Or if you've been wanting to write this book for a long time, you've probably told people, man, I kind of want to write a book about this thing, right? So if you have been wanting to write a book forever, tell me a little bit what it's about here in the comments. I probably actually know what both of you are going to talk about, but Um, let me know so we can chat with each other about what you're actually writing your books about. So, if I haven't talked about it enough, I am working on a romance novel of sorts. It's what I'm calling a spiritual urban romantasy. So it has, romance, a little bit of fantasy and magic. And then it's an urban romance, which means it's like in a contemporary setting, as opposed to like a romantasy in, medieval or Nordic times or in, you know, Africa or, in the past or in the future, right? So this is like a present time. Um, that is the current project I'm working on. I've been editing, oh my gosh, I feel like forever. And like on chapter 5 out of 30. So I have goals on that one. We'll talk about that later too. So I know that Melanie, you're writing a book about your like spiritual um, process and the like kind of getting more grounded in spirituality into your daily life through somatic exercises and different kinds of body work. And I know there's a lot that we've been talking about, your book is about. And Kyla, is a memoir, right? Specifically about the time from 2017 to 2026, surviving narcissistic abuse while getting a PhD and trying to help your sick child, which is such an intense experience. I started listening to your podcast and I didn't get to finish it, but it's a very intense story. So I can't wait to get to help you with this memoir. So there's this misconception, and you probably have experienced this, that like to be an author, you have to have written and published a whole book, right? Is that what you have believed or have been presented with over your lifetime? Like, well, otherwise, if you haven't actually been published, you're just a writer or an aspiring author, right? You're not quite an author until you have a published book to show for it, right? And I'm here to tell you that that's a bunch of bullshit. Okay. You don't actually have to publish a book to be an author. You are an author the moment you decide to write a book. I know this is a hot take. I know this is controversial, especially for people who have written and published books. And they're like, why are you discounting all the work I put in? I wrote this, I finished it, I put in all this work to publish it and all these things. And now you're just saying anybody can be an author. And that's not exactly what I'm saying, but it's this idea, it's one of these like secrets to success that almost everybody across all disciplines has in common, whether they're authors or athletes, celebrities or influencers, whether they're like moguls or movement builders, right? There's the secret to success. And this is actually how the secret to how I got my book written in 3 days. And through a $10,000 launch party for my publishing house last year, this is how I went from a tiny, shitty apartment in the worst part of town to a huge 5-bedroom house in one of the best neighborhoods in town just a few months ago. This is how I went from being trapped in a corporate publishing job to being free to run my business and to spend time with my family and be present in their lives and also replace my income immediately. And it's how I'm about to manifest myself a new car that can fit my baby daddy and our 3 kids and our 2 dogs comfortably with cold AC. I'm using this method. So this is nothing crazy or new. It's actually scientific, right? And it's called a quantum leap or a quantum shift. It may seem woo-woo, but it's actually very grounded in science. So let's talk about how this works. And we do have a doctor of science in the house. So I hope I do this justice. Please let me know if I make any mistakes, Kyla, because you probably know more about quantum physics than I do. So, time, right, is not actually linear the way that we experience it. Time is not fixed. The past has happened, but the future is not fixed. It exists as this field of possibilities. So it depends on the choices that you make and the choices that other people make around you. But these choices that you make determine the future events that are going to happen. It determines the timeline that you take. So think of it like an airport. And there's all these planes that are flying in and out of all these many worldwide destinations. And all of these places exist, right, as potential destinations. So let's say you decide you want to go on a trip. You would go to the internet, right, and get on your favorite ticketing website and you choose the airport that you want to leave from. So we've all been here before, I'm sure. Like, where's the last place you flew? For me, I flew to a women's retreat in this little beachside town outside of San Jose last year. And so I actually was trying to save a little bit of money. And so I flew into San Francisco International Airport from San Diego because the ticket prices were a little bit cheaper than flying into San Jose. It was a huge mistake because I ended up having to take a $120 Uber from San Francisco to this tiny little beachside town. And like the money that I saved on the t plane ticket, I more than spent on the Uber. Just because, like, when I got to San Francisco, I was looking at the train schedules and I was like, I don't want to deal with this right now after I've been on this, like stressful plane trip and I have two suitcases and books and all these things with me. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna pay for the Uber. So, you know, these destinations existed, right? I could have chosen San Jose, but instead I chose San Francisco, right? So maybe that wasn't the best choice, but that was the choice that I made. And it works the same way with like the quantum realm, right? So you, all these destinations exist, but you only choose one. And you're going to choose one airport that you're going to fly into, right? So then you choose your date. It gives you like a list of dates and times, and you have a certain date that you want to go on this trip. And then you pick that, and then maybe you also pick a return ticket, right? And then so you lock in your timeline at this point. And after you're locked in, you buy your ticket, and it's like, oh, wow, like this is really happening, right? And like you're taking a trip. And it starts getting really real at this point. So, now you have your ticket. When you are going on a trip, what's the first thing you do after you buy your plane ticket? Are you someone who gets to work thinking about like outfits right away and like packing? Are you somebody who's like a very logistical person? You start planning like your hotel and where you're gonna be staying or like how you're gonna get places. That's what I do. Like for me, right away, I start building up my itinerary. I'm like, I want to get organized as soon as possible. I want to plan everything out so that at least I know the framework of how things are supposed to go on the trip, whether or not everything goes that way. At least I kind of have everything built out in my mind, right? So that's, you know, that's like probably the first step for a lot of people, right? Figuring out where you're staying, whether you're gonna need to rent a car, get an Uber, hotel, right? All those things. And then as the time starts getting closer, and then you're doing more of the work, like to get ready, you're actually planning out your outfits, you're making lists of everything that you need, you're coordinating plans, arranging all the things, right? Packing. And then the day finally comes where you're like putting all your last minute toiletries in there and downloading your boarding pass and getting your ride to the airport situated. And then you're dragging your suitcase to the airport and you're checking it in. So you're doing all these things, doing all this work, going through security, finding your gate, finding your seat. You take off. And for a minute there, you're like up at 30,000 feet and you're like, yeah, you're sailing in the blue skies above the clouds and you're relaxing with like your drink and your snack. And you're like, yeah, I'm on my way. I'm on my way. I'm almost there. This is so easy. I can do this. And then you touch down and it's all chaotic again, right? And you're deciding the train you want to take is too much to deal with. So you just get in an Uber and you're super stressed out about how everything costs. But then you arrive, right? And you get there and it's all worth it. And all the work and all the preparation and all the stress and coordinating and planning and everything, it's all worth it when you get there and you look out of your hotel room window at the beautiful view. Or you get to see the family you haven't seen in months and you're all hugging each other and you're so happy to see each other. So, yeah, like this is kind of how the quantum leap works. You choose a destination, you make the plans, you do the work, and then you get there, right? And it's not that complicated. It's actually really simple. And you can think about this like too is You could have done this, like, say, the old-fashioned way, right? So if I wanted to go from here to San Francisco without an airplane or a train or even a car, I mean, sure, we could do this like the Oregon Trail type shit where we're like, getting bit by a snake and dying of dysentery. But like, yeah, that's one way to do it. But like, why? You know what I mean? Why do it that way? Why do it the hard way and the long way when you can do it the quick and easy way? So that's what a quantum leap will do for you. And let's take that metaphor and like relate it to becoming an author, okay? So you deciding to do that travel, you deciding to take the trip, that is you deciding to write the book. Your destination is an author. But like, let's get specific about it, right? Because you don't just want to go to Hawaii, right? We're not just going to Hawaii. We got to go to an Oahu and we got to go to Honolulu Airport. And forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce the name of the airport in Honolulu. But just to say, we have to choose like specific city and airport. You can't just be like, I want to go to Hawaii. You have to be specific about it. So when we're talking about being an author, you want to be specific. Say, I want to be a best-selling memoir author. I want to be a world famous speaker and author. I want to be a millionaire author. I want to be, a best-selling fiction author, a best-selling children's book author. Be specific about it so that you can pick the correct destination. Because again, like we're not just taking a general trip. This is a specific trip. We need to know exactly where we're going. Okay. And then the timeline, right? The timeline is when you decide when you're going to do it. And this is absolutely necessary because without this crucial element, your book, much like your trip, isn't real. Until you buy the ticket, you can't take the trip. So until you set the timeline, you're not going to get the book done. And I've seen it over and over and over where people are saying, I'm going to write a book. And I say, cool, when? And they're like, like when I get to it, I have a couple things going on, but I'll do it after that. They don't set a definite timeline on it, and it drags on for literally years. You don't have to do that. Picking the date locks in the timeline, and then it's more than just an idea. It's happening, okay? And you have to declare that to yourself. It's not something you have to tell the world, although that does help to have accountability sometimes. It's really something you have to do within yourself. And then the work you're doing to prepare for the trip, that's like the work you're doing to write the book. So yeah, it still takes work. Like it's, of course, there's still work involved. This is still the real world, and you have to take action to make things happen. But what's different is that you will not be doing just like random work, like booking a room in a different city, wasting time, effort, money, spinning your wheels, like overthinking things. You won't be doing that because you know exactly where you're going and you'll be able to do the right work and it'll be much easier to do because there's not all this resistance coming from, am I doing the right thing? Like you know what you're doing, you're going to be there. And then when you arrive at your destination of being the published author, you'll have everything ready for you because you knew where you were going and you did the work to get there. And it's going to be like, oh, I'm here. Finally, I've arrived. So that's a quantum shift. And like I said, it's simple. And like Kyla confirmed, it's not woo-woo. Okay, this is science, right? And it's not spiritual bypassing either. This is not like, I'm just going to believe so hard that I'll be an author, it's going to happen. It's not that either. Ask any successful person. They will tell you a very similar process that they follow to get to where they are, even if they called it something different. It's planning where you're going to go, visualizing it, believing it's happening, taking the action to get there. So, next, what we're going to do is plan our trip. And this is where you're going to need a journal, something to write with, because you're going to write down your destination, start making your plans, and lock in that timeline. So, if you need a second, go ahead and go get your journal. I'll give you guys a minute here, and I'm going to take a sip of my greens drink, and then we will get started on making our plans. All right. How's everybody doing so far? I know both of you have young children, so I understand like you might be half in and half out here, but I do really appreciate both of you for being here because you have young children and it's hard. So I feel you. Oh, yay. Well, that's good. I'm glad you can have full focus and not have to be splitting your attention between you and this and your child. All right. Awesome, Melanie. Ready. Thank you for letting me know. So, we are going to start writing things down. So, first thing on a blank piece of paper, we're going to start with today's date and then quantum author, title at the top so you remember this so you can go back to it. And then we're going to write underneath that, I am writing a book. Now, this is your official declaration. Just, I am writing a book. And next, we're going to get more specific with it. So, if you want to, you can write like destination, best-selling millionaire, author, speaker, or whatever you want to write. I am going to be, I am a, if you want to write it in present tense. I know a lot of my more spiritual people like to, write their affirmations in present tense, so you can do that. Whatever way works for you. If you want to follow the airport metaphor, I'm going to extend that through the quantum shift. So if you want to write destination, that would be really fun too. Okay, so for me, destination, best-selling romance author, millionaire author and speaker, self-help thought leader, any identity, any timeline that you want to embody right now. I'm gonna write that down. Next, if you know what you're writing about, write that down. So you're writing your spiritual self-help book. You can at least write the genre if you don't know exactly, because like I know sometimes you have like a lot of ideas and we're still trying to like pare down what exactly you're doing. For Kylie, you write down memoir about surviving narcissistic abuse. Um, if you're writing a romantasy like me, I'm getting specific, and spiritual urban romantasy is what I'm working on right now. And then if you actually know the title, write that down too. So you're like planning out everything here. Okay. Now, most importantly, again, this is the crucial step. You are putting a timeline on this. You have to have a timeline on your project so it becomes real. This isn't for me, okay? I'm not going to be calling you up on the date you wrote down and asking you if you wrote your book. Just like if you're going on a trip, I'm not going to call you on the day of your flight asking if you packed your panties and got on the plane. Okay, this is for you. This is up to you. This is your decision. You are going to do this. So make it something that's important to you and that's also realistic and timely for you. So, for example, like when I wrote my book, I decided to do it when I had like a large chunk of time off of work for the holidays. I get 2 weeks, get, got, got 2 weeks off of work from Hay House when I worked there. And so I used that time and took a couple extra days off so that I had like a solid 3 week period of time just to work on the book. And I set myself a date. So I'm going to finish it by January 31st. And I actually completed it January 28th, 3 days ahead of schedule. Now, this is a novel. This was not like the self-help book that I wrote, or the, not self-help, but my Speak Your Book to Life, which I wrote in 3 days, the Christmas break before that in 2024. I wrote that in 3 days because this is like, I mean, this is like second nature to me. I just wrote everything I knew about writing for business. Relatively easy compared to building a world and writing a novel and having complex characters and all of these things, right? So I set this goal and I accomplished it because I said I was going to do it and I did it. And that's really what it takes. You have to keep your promise to yourself that you're going to impose this deadline on yourself. It's not for anybody else, and that you're going to honor it and build that trust with yourself to do the work to make it happen. So it's really very powerful to put a timeline on it and then follow through about it. So when are you actually going to have your book written? Maybe you want to have a launch date that's specific, like a significant date for you to launch it, or maybe like a meaningful time of year. Maybe you want to do it in the winter or the spring or the new year. So be realistic and give yourself enough time to get it done. But don't give yourself so much time that you're going to let yourself procrastinate and just work on it when you get around to it. Because again, it's almost impossible to actually do it if you don't have a set time that is timely and imminent. Okay. So within the next few months, right? Decide right now. Um, and if you want to, drop it in the comments when you think would be the best time for your launch. Now, for me, I wrote my novel in January, and I've been like, oh, I'm gonna have it edited, and I'm gonna edit it, and I'm gonna, do it by the end of the J June, I think I had said to myself, and then I was working on another client's work, and I'm like, okay, I've decided I want to launch my book in November. I want to have a launch party. I want to have other authors involved, and I want to, it's like a like kind of a publishing summit multi-launch party. So I'm like, okay, well, if I'm launching it in November, that means I have to finish the editing by August 30th to give myself enough time to design and publish and launch and plan it. I honestly gave myself too much time because I decided a few months ago that I was going to launch in November. And then I was like, I got time. Tortoise and the hare syndrome. I'm the hare. I'm like, I got time. I'll work on it when I get a chance. And now it's like, oh shit, I have 1 month. I have 1 month to finish editing my novel so I can publish it in November when I said I was going to have a launch party because I told people I was going to do it. So now I have to do it. So, like like I said, this is super crucial and it's very important that you choose the right time, okay? And I know like editing my novel in 1 month is like a huge goal, but I've edited my client's 500-page memoir in 1 month. So I know it's possible. I can do it. I just have to actually do the work. Now there is more prep work to do, right? Kyla, I think for me, I'm leaning towards January 3rd, 2027. My job is writing, and memoir writing is actually harder than I anticipated. It's sometimes hard to face some of the things I need to, and I 100% hear you on that. It was really hard when I was working on a memoir as well. I got like, I want to say 65 pages into it, and it gets really dark, because it was a very dark time in my life. I was like an addict and I was living with somebody who was like narcissistic and like all these things, right? I'm sure you understand. So it was a really hard place to get back into after I had gotten out of that place, especially all the cringe shit I did. Oh my God, like reading my old journals and listening to myself like fawn all over this guy who was such a piece of shit. I'm just like, ugh, it makes me want to vomit. But I needed that. I had to go through that. And I also, it's something that I have to share. So it does put you in a certain frame of mind. And you do have to really protect your mind, especially when you have like family and other stuff going on. You can't let that bleed through to everything else you're doing, like being in that dark place again. So I totally hear you on that. It might take longer, working on it at certain times when you are emotionally able to do that. It does take a little extra effort to do memoirs for sure. It's emotional, reliving the whole thing. So, like I said, there is definitely more prep work that needs to be done, but a lot of that can be done after the ticket's purchased, right? So that's what we are going to do right now. Our quantum shift. Our quantum shift is going to involve meeting our future selves at three different points along the chosen timeline. So, first, the point just before you publish your book. The second is the day of your book launch. And the third is 3 months after your book was released. And there is a reason for doing this, which I'll discuss a little bit more after. But now that we have everything planned out, this is where we're going to actually do the quantum shift. So, if you can, get into a comfortable place, comfortable position, seated, lying down, whatever works best for you where you are. If you can have quiet with no interruptions, that's great. If not, this will still work. You don't have to be in a deep meditative trance for this to work. So, don't worry if there's noises around. You'll be fine. But I'm going to be doing this part kind of intuitively. I'm not on a script right now. So, um, you know, just bear with me if I get lost in the flow. We're still here together. Okay, so let's get started with a deep breath. Just centering ourselves, feeling the connection to oxygen, to the air in our lungs, giving us life, connecting us to this world. We are going to visualize ourselves in front of a computer, getting ready to plan an amazing trip. So you're in front of your computer and you look at the screen and you see a ticketing website. And all of the airports are in this list, and you can choose any destination that you want. And the destinations are things like best-selling author, published author and speaker, thought leader and author, world-renowned teacher and author. And you may even see best-selling self-help author, best-selling spiritual author, best-selling memoir author. You might even get really specific and say New York Times best-selling author. And you choose your destination from this list. And you look at all the different dates and times that are available to you. And you choose the date that you have already decided is the date. And you lock in and you purchase the ticket. And once you purchase that ticket, you feel this buzz of excitement in your chest as you realize it's finally happening. It's really real. I am writing a book. I am going to be a best-selling author. That is the timeline you have chosen. You bought the ticket, you locked it in, and now it's real. So now we are going to move forward in time to just a few days before your book launch. You're getting everything ready. Maybe you're having a big in-person launch party and you're making sure that the food and the drinks are going to be there and making sure you have help with setting up, making sure that you have the right seating and the sound equipment you need. You've already received a box of books that you're going to be autographing at your party, and you're so excited, showing them off on your social media, reminding everybody about your party coming up. Or maybe you're having a virtual launch party and you're writing out your emails, making social media posts, reminding everybody to be on the call. You're going to be reading from your book for the first time in front of an audience, and you're so excited. And feel those feelings of anticipation. Feel the sense of pride at holding your book in your hands. Feel how real it feels to flip through the pages, how it feels against your thumbs as the pages go through and you stop and you look at the words on the page that you wrote and you see your picture on the back cover. You're like, yes, I did that. And it's about to be real. It's happening. And feel how wonderful it feels. And it's okay if you also feel some nerves, like maybe I'm not quite ready yet. Everybody feels that way. But know this is where you're going and what you're supposed to be doing. Now we're going to step forward just a few days in time, 3 more days. It's the day of the book launch. You wake up in the morning and you're so happy. You have a huge smile on your face because you know you're going to have so many friends and family and even strangers are going to be at your book launch event, people you don't even know, whose lives are going to be impacted by what you have to say. And you check your Amazon pre-sales and you far surpassed what you thought you were going to sell before the day. And you are just mouth open, eyes in shock, so happy to see those numbers on your pre-orders way further than you anticipated. And you know there's a million things to do today as you're getting ready for your launch party, your virtual or in-person launch party, but with every move you make, you feel so much confidence. You know this is what you're meant to do. Everything in your life has been leading up to this point. You are a published author. It really happened. And it's happened today. Today is the day. You will never forget this day. It will be etched in your mind as the day that you officially became a published author. And feel the satisfaction in your body. Feel the pride for all the work you put in. And anchor in to the sense of confidence that you knew it was going to happen, that you knew it, and you made it happen. Now we're going to walk forward further on our timeline of being a published author 3 months into the future after your book has been released. 3 months ago, you put your book out into the world, and the impact it has made has blown your mind. You've had so many people tell you the personal impact it has had on them. People are writing you emails and messages, thanking you for writing it, telling you specific things that they learned, specific chapters that were their favorites, something that they couldn't believe they had in common with you, and how they were able to see themselves in your story, how they were able to apply these lessons in their life. And you go check in on your sales because you haven't checked in a little while. The initial excitement has worn off, and you're not obsessively checking your sales page every single day anymore because you know it's already impacting so many people because it's just more and more people every day. And it became normal. It was just more and more people every day. And so you stop checking every day, but it's been 3 months now. So you're like, I'm gonna check my sales. And you're blown away by how many people have purchased your book, by how many pages have been read, by how many lives have been impacted. And you have so much gratitude for all of these people who are reading your book, knowing that every single one of these people took the time to find your book, decided that it was important and that they wanted to read it and that it could help them. And then it did. And maybe they even recommend it to a friend. And that's why you have even more sales than you can imagine, because your impact is reaching further and further with every day. And you think about that day your book launched, and you remember how you felt. You remember how excited you were and how proud you were. And now it just all seems like a normal, everyday thing. You're a published author. You have a book out there. You talk about it all the time. You're on podcasts talking about your book, getting it out in front of new people. You're writing more. You're still building an audience every single day because this is what you know you're meant to do. So now we're going to have a little souvenir from our trip. We're going to choose a souvenir that's going to represent this future timeline, some kind of memento of yourself in the future. It could be something like a piece of jewelry, a ring, a bracelet, a necklace, something that you can put on every day. And when you put that on, you're locking in that new timeline because this is what your future author self is wearing. It may be a crystal you keep in your pocket, or maybe something you keep by your writing desk, something that you see on a regular basis that you consciously choose to incorporate into your life. Your souvenir. It's your souvenir of your trip. So decide that now. If you want to, you can find it and put it on. If you don't have access to it right this minute, you can wait till after the call. But decide on what your memento is going to be. And then the last thing we're going to do to lock in our new timeline is something different. And this is something that, again, across the board, people always say, if you want to have a new experience, do something different. But we're not just going to do some random thing like walking backwards or writing with your left or opposite hand. We want to do something that our future author self would do, something new, something different, something you don't do on a regular basis, but that the future author version of you does on a regular basis. So you're going to choose that. Decide what that is for you. It could be something that has to do with writing, maybe writing every day, maybe journaling, maybe something along those lines, or it could be something else like when I'm a future author, I'm going to make sure I put lotion on my hands every day. That's something that I don't do every day, but maybe my future author self does. So maybe that's the thing I'm going to start doing. So choose your new timeline action. And then, even though we're going to be coming back into our 3D reality now, we're going to hold the vision of this new timeline. And you'll start to notice things that are different. Not just the things you're doing that are different, but things around you are going to be different. Things are starting to shift in your favor. Notice these things and hold that vision of this is where I'm going now. This is the direction. I'm taking this trip. I bought my ticket. It's really real, and I'm going. So you can come back to our current reality now. If you need to take a moment to reorient yourself, to do a few movements, so if you need to stand up and stretch, get a drink. I know that was quite a ride. So take a few minutes to do that. I'm going to take a sip of my greens drink here and stand up and stretch as well. But think about, how did that feel? Mm, 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 mm. Mm, mm. All right. Okay. So how did it feel to be in that new reality? And actually, which one of those realities, when you tapped into purchasing your ticket 3 days before the trip, the launch, the day of the launch, or 3 months after the launch, which one of those points in time felt the most real to you when you were in it? I'm curious. I'm curious. For me, I think it was like launch day was when I felt the most intense emotions and it felt the most real. And I could really picture that again, um, being part of my reality is like, it's launch day. Oh my gosh, I have so much to do, but I'm so excited. Today's the day. So, which one was the most real for you? I would love to hear your reflections on that journey and, anything that came through for you that you want to share. So I do this, I was said I was going to explain after the 3 points. So I do this 3 points when I do the quantum leap because I want you to feel like a range of emotions when you lock in this timeline. Emotions are some of the most like grounded ways, concrete ways to like attach to something, right? Like when you think about memories, you remember the things that were the most emotional for you, that you have the most emotional attachment to most of the time. Unless, we also have that trauma brain thing that will block out things, but for the most part, right? When you're thinking about memories, it's the things that you felt the most emotional about. So when you want to create a future reality, you can use those emotions in the same way to create that future memory where you're very emotional. So that's why we use these 3 different points, or 4 different points if you count the day you buy the ticket. So you're feeling all these different emotions, the full range, like anticipation, excitement, pride. And then you also have the memory of it happening in the past, which makes it even more concrete and normalizes that new reality. So you're not just experiencing it like, oh, this is the day it happened. Oh my gosh, it's so real. A lot of people do that and they stop there, which I feel is a bit incomplete. And the future memory is a trick I actually learned from Neville Goddard. If you haven't heard of him, he's one of the OGs in like the manifestation sphere. And that was one of his things was future memories, creating this future, creating a memory of a future point in time. And so that's why we do that to lock in those emotions and make it normal, make it feel like just a regular Tuesday, right? Okay. Well, I don't know if you feel as excited as I do, but now the ticket has officially been purchased. So your next step is to prepare for the trip, like do the actual work, okay? So I'm here to help you make it quicker and easier than you can even imagine with my best tips for each part of the process. Everything from planning, writing, editing, publishing, launching, everything. I have my like 3 best tips for each part of the process. So you probably want to take notes right now if you don't still have your paper out, okay? This is really, really good stuff. And this is stuff that you're not going to find on ChatGPT or on almost any writing courses because this is stuff I've learned from directly from working with authors in the self-publishing space, with traditional publishing, with Hay House, with professional authors, spiritual authors, conscious authors, scientific authors, everybody that I have learned from. I'm bringing you all this knowledge. So this is not just any old generic publishing stuff. This is really good stuff. Okay, start with writing. Now, writing and planning go hand in hand. To me, you cannot start writing until you plan things out. I'm a planner. I mean, you probably heard the term like planner and pantser. Planners, they organize everything and they make sure everything is kind of set before they start writing. And then these pantsers will just kind of start writing and see what happens. And there's really no right or wrong way to do it. But I can tell you from experience that the process is so much easier if you do at least some planning ahead of time. So, the first thing before anything else is get to know your reader. Who are you writing this for? Because that is going to make like so much else way easier. When you know who you're writing it for, you're able to speak to that person directly. You're able to know what they need and fulfill those needs. You're able to know the questions that they would ask and anticipate those and answer them ahead of time. You'll know what drives your reader to finish, like keep reading and continue reading to finish reading, right? So that they don't just stop on chapter three and then put the book down and never finish it. So the more you know about your reader, the better your book is going to be, not just from a marketing standpoint, because of course, from a marketing, you need to know who you're going to sell your book to, but from a writing standpoint, you need to know who your book is for so that you can write it to them. And it's across genres. Doesn't matter if you're writing spiritual, self-help, memoir, poetry, fiction, whatever, right? You need to know who it's for. I know my book, for example, my spiritual romantasy is not really for your typical romantasy readers. It's not really for romance readers because they expect a specific type of story, and I don't follow the general formulas in my book. I also have really complicated characters. I don't use a lot of the same tropes that are very popular. So like there's reasons that romance readers will fucking hate my book. There's reasons why romantasy readers are going to be like, this isn't even romantasy, and say that I'm full of shit. But the people I'm writing it for are people who are on a personal development journey, who are flawed people, who have problems, who don't always know what's real and can understand that there's more about the journey than just the romance aspect. Because I don't even know if my characters are going to get together in the end. I honestly haven't decided yet. They're going to have to tell me when we get there. So you want to know who you're writing for. That's like the first part of planning. If nothing else, just know who you're writing for. I also highly recommend outlining. I think it's just something that makes your life easier if you know generally the direction of your story. You don't have to um, use it as canon. You can change it. You know, your characters are going to develop in different ways. They may take you in different directions. Or if it's like a self-help book, you may rearrange things that go better in other places or eliminate things completely, put them in a whole new book, whatever. If you're doing a memoir, you need to know which parts of the story you're going to tell and what kind of timeline, because not everybody writes in a linear timeline either. My client who I'm working with right now on a memoir is it's completely non-linear storytelling. So it's really fun, but it's a little disorienting because you go from college to like having a child and back to childhood and then you know. So those kind of things outlining really helps with. It just helps you stay organized. And if you're going to outline, I recommend thinking of it kind of as like you're making a sandwich, right? Especially if you're doing like a how-to book or self-help book or something for a business that's a nonfiction that's gonna help people in a certain way. Or sharing your methodology or sharing some kind of um, plan or thing that you do, right? Something you have expert knowledge in. Is talk about it as if you're making a sandwich, like how you're going to get from point A to point B, what you need, why you need it, that kind of stuff, right? Kyla, as a science author, outlining is essential. It takes away any anxiety that there may be when starting and directing what you want to write. Absolutely. And I can imagine like with academics, like you have to outline. I'm remembering college slightly, and I remember, it's very essential when you're writing for academics, but when you have a rational scientific mind, I'm sure it just makes everything easier to plan everything out before. And when I started writing my novel, of the 6 weeks that I was working on it, 2 of those weeks were just planning. And that was planning character development and that like character Bibles that are like, 5 pages long per main character. Um, Setting doing research. Everything's based in, this city I live in. So I want to make sure everything is true to life and had specific locations. And so there's a ton of research involved. And that took me probably 2 weeks. Yeah, I think it was about 2 weeks. And then the sitting down and writing part took about 4 weeks. So in total, I guess it was like 6 weeks it took me to write my novel. Um, okay, now the writing part. This is the part that most people are like, this is exhausting and I don't have time. So if you know me, you know how much I talk about speaking your book. This is one of the things that's um, very much a part of my brand because this is how I work. And now it's not always going to work best for every kind of book you want to write. It does work for a lot of the books that we can write in, especially for business, for self-help, for memoir, where you're telling stories or where you're talking about a methodology or you're talking about something that you talk about a lot. Like like with Melanie, maybe it would be like early childhood development. You talk about this a lot because it comes up in conversation a lot. So you're very used to speaking about this, right? And so I'm always talking about speak it, speak your book, right? And there's a reason because speaking is really the most efficient. So I checked one of my videos and I wrote 2,500 words in 15 minutes in a video. It's one of my course videos. So by speaking instead of typing, I literally was writing 166 words per minute. I don't know about you, but I can't type that fast. That's like more than twice as fast as I can type. I type like 70-ish words a minute. So that's more than twice as fast as I type. And I don't know any human that can type that fast unless maybe you're a professional stenographer. Otherwise, this is so much more efficient. And yeah, you're going to have like filler words and ums and ohs and blah, blah, blah. But overall, like this was an edited video. This was removed filler words, an edited 15-minute video and 2,500 words in it. So that's just to give you an example of how much you can accomplish versus sitting down and typing. It's like more than twice as much. Now, an awesome tip that Dr. Kyla gave me, which I wanted to share with everybody, is if you have a bunch of handwritten journals, I know a lot of you are like handwritten journal people or handwritten notes. My friend Aneshka has a stack of journals like this that she's written all of her stuff in. And, I was like, yeah, I just, transcribe it, type it. Well, Kyla came to me and was like, yes, speaking, that was amazing. What a great tip. What I did was I read my journals out loud to a voice recorder and then transcribed that, which was like mind blown. I mean, I was just like, speak it out loud, Kyla, but you extended that and you're like, read it and then transcribe it back to me, which is fucking genius. Like, I didn't even think of that. I was just like, thinking of my own method, but then you came up with that brilliant hack. So I wanted to share that with you who have handwritten notes, handwritten journals, poetry, whatever. That is a really, really efficient way to do it. Okay. And it'll save your hands a lot of trouble. So thank you, Kyla. Thank you for that one. That was just like, again, totally blew my mind when you told me that one. I was like, so much better than even what I came up with. All right. So I want to move on to editing. Editing is essential. And we're going with this theme of speaking. So let's continue the theme and say we're going to speak to edit. Oh, that sounds kind of crazy, but reading your book aloud or having it read to you aloud by like a text to speech. I think Microsoft Word has it, and Google, I don't know if Google Docs one is very good. One of them is better than the other. I can't remember which one. But having it read to you by like a robot or or even a person, if you can enlist them for that, will actually help you catch more errors because your eyes will fill in and see things that aren't there because your mind is creating this, right? And on your visual. And so you miss mistakes. But when you have to read it out loud, you catch a lot more things. So this is why, like, when you do an audiobook, a lot of times people come back with tons of edits after they record an audiobook because they found a bunch of shit they missed before. Um, it also like can help you clarify awkward phrasing or like help your dialogue feel more natural if you feel like it sounds kind of stiff when you read it out loud. Say it again like you would actually say it if you were the person and then write it like that. That's one of my favorite tips because like writing dialogue can feel really forced. So I put myself in the character's position and say the words out loud that they would say and stumble over them and I and whatever I have to do to make it sound like I actually am speaking it, that's what I do. So speaking to edit is also awesome. Now, I know some of you might not want to hear this, and some of you are like, well, yeah, duh. So I know there's like very different polarities on this next topic, but let's talk a little bit about AI. I do not recommend you use ChatGPT or Claude or any of those services to edit your book. There's a lot of reasons, but let's just keep it simple and say, I know it's tempting because it's free and it's easy, but it's really a terrible editor. And I'm speaking from my own personal experience with my book. I hate to admit it, but when I was working on my novel, I was giving my chapters to ChatGPT and asking it to read it for me and give me any pointers. I hated what it did, but I was like, well, it must know what it's talking about, right? Because I was being very specific in my prompts and like, oh, well, scan many classic novels and tell me how this compares to this and this. And I thought because I was being very specific and prompting correctly that it was going to give me better advice. Well, I gave my novel to an actual novel editor friend, and almost everything that ChatGPT told me to do, she flagged as like, I wouldn't do this. I would change this. I would change this. And I was like, I knew it, like I knew it felt wrong, and I did it anyway and went against my own intuition and trusted a robot, and it was wrong, right? It's frequently wrong, and not just about stylistic things or whatever. I mean, it's wrong about facts, it's wrong about information. And that's not even to mention all the other costs of using AI personally to your credibility. People really hate using AI in creative spaces, like to an intense degree. If you want to get traditionally published, a lot of publishers aren't accepting work used, even edited with AI because it's hard to tell where it stops and you begin. And so it's like a very gray area. And so a lot of publishers are just not doing it at all. Um, and then the environmental cost and the cost of humans being, their jobs and all the things, right? So all that to say, don't use AI to edit. If you can't hire a person, like a professional, like a super, super good professional, there are people called beta readers that will read your book and give you suggestions. There are other people that can do it for free or cheap. There are other options. And, I can even help you if you don't have we'll work together. We can work things out, right? Because I want your book to be done and I want it to be good. And also, if you did get started with AI and you were like, it's no big deal, everybody's using it. And then over time, you were like, you know what? I don't feel good about this anymore. But now I'm in so deep, I don't know how to undo what I've done. You can still undo what you've done. And if you decide to change your mind because of, all the reasons, right? You can, and I can help you with that. I can help you DAI your book. It's really never too late to make a different choice. So don't worry if you are already all the way through it, because I literally gave my whole book to ChatGPT and then decided I wasn't going to use any of the suggestions after for a lot of reasons. So I'm completely rewriting my book. It's completely different. I mean, the first 5 chapters are completely different than they were before. I removed every trace of ChatGPT. So it's possible, if you really want to do it. And I would recommend that if you want to maintain professional credibility and not be canceled by all the trolls because they are on a mission. There are really authors on a mission to like ruin people's careers over using AI. So you might just want to steer clear. I was in the crossfire. Okay, moving on. Publishing. Okay, so I know this is still such a huge question for a lot of people. Oh, sorry, Carla. I'm going to answer this before we move on. I use it to make this concept arts. I plan on having someone actually draw it out. Yeah. Yeah, and I totally hear you on that. I did the same thing with my cover. I had like created something in Canva and I put that in ChatGPT and I was like, kind of make this different and it made something. And then I was like, yeah, I'm obviously not going to use that because it looks like AI. So I, enlisted a friend who's hand illustrating everything. And I feel much better about that because it's got the human touch and it's also going to be really cool looking because it's like Art Nouveau style and all the books are going to be in the same style. It's going to be super cool. Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, I work with all kinds of authors and I'm not going to not work with somebody if they use AI because I understand everybody's in different places on their journeys financially, you know, uh, with what they can do, with what they believe in. I'm not going to judge anybody. I'm like the current author I'm working with has made a lot. It depends on AI for a lot, including like the artwork in their book, which I tried to talk them out of many, many times. And then they were finally just like, no, I'm just going to do this. And so there's no reason for me to fight about it or, you know, I still want to find more people that don't want to use it, but I don't judge anybody. So we're all at different places in our journeys. Okay, publishing. Um, so there's still this like traditional versus self-publishing, right? And it's an ongoing conversation. But lately, it's almost seems to be a no-brainer for people. Like if you're writing for your business and you're already successful in your business, then like why wouldn't you self-publish? If you are writing fiction and you have a bunch of books that you have planned and you want to be in control of everything, like obviously, let's just self-publish it, right? So there's a lot of shifting toward the self-publishing and indie publishing lately. I think a lot of people are also disillusioned with traditional publishing just because it's been historically very difficult to get into. And it's still extremely competitive to the point that, it's still the like getting an agent part to get traditionally published is rife with just rejection after rejection after rejection. And that's still a huge part of the traditional publishing process, which a lot of people just don't want to deal with. And I can understand that because in a lot of ways, they've been gatekeeping for so long. They were, the authority on what was worthy of being published and put out into the world. And we don't exactly need them anymore. We don't need these powerful publishers to tell us what's good enough to read anymore. We can discern that for ourselves. And a lot of times with people who are very successful in business, It's like, why would I go and pay? Why would I go and publish with somebody who's going to pay me 15% or less of what I could make if I just did it myself? It's like, these people who are like, I already have a very successful career. I already have people buying from me. I already have thousands and thousands of followers who want to, hear what I have to say. So what's the point of going through this traditional publishing process? What's the point of begging someone to publish me for them to take most of my profits, right? So that being said, like I said, traditional publishing is still extremely competitive. So if you are just dead set on getting into a big publisher, that's why you need an agent. Okay, if you're not trying to get with a big publisher, you probably don't need an agent. And I know that's always a big question. People are very confused about that. Like, if I'm publishing, do I need an agent? Only for big traditional publishers, most of the time. There are actually some big traditional publishers that accept what are called unsolicited manuscripts, or where you can just like send in your work to them. One in particular is like Harlequin. Harlequin, the romance people, like the Harlequin, the huge name of romance. They have several subsidiaries that you can send in direct submissions to be published, and they're like digital first. So you can, it's like it's an ebook first, and then if it's successful, then they do a print version. So they're creating pathways for people to have more empowered choices in traditional publishing. So you don't have to go through an agent. But if we're talking like, Simon and Schuster, Penguin, Hay House, those kind of publishers, they want you to have an agent. And one thing people don't understand about agents is that you don't pay them at all. Like, you don't pay them up front, you don't pay out of pocket, you don't pay for an agent. So if you want to get an agent, you like cost is not a factor. So just I like want to make that very clear because most people have this belief that I have to go hire an agent. I have to go find someone that pay to represent my book, and that's not how it works. Real agents are someone who work on commission and they have a relationship with different publishing houses and authors, and their goal is to match authors to publishing houses. So they only get paid if they match the author with a publishing house and get a contract, and they get a percentage of that contract. The so they only want to work with authors who they think they can get published. So authors who work with the genres that they have relationships with publishing houses, right? So you're going to have to find an agent who works with your specific type of book. It's a very like what is the word I'm looking for? Um it's a very like relationship that has a lot of moving parts, like with dynamics where there's, they're not an employee, right? They are someone who is working for you and for the publisher to bring together this match. And so that's why searching for an agent that is the right match for you is kind of like, searching through like dating sites and trying to find someone to date that's compatible with you. It takes a certain kind of person, the right kind of person, the person you're looking for, the person they're looking for. You find a match, it works, it's great, right? It's not always a match. Sometimes you get with somebody because you think that they're going to be the best, and then they end up being a total douche and you have to part ways. It happens. But the main thing I want you to take from this is that you don't pay an agent. So if you're looking for an agent and someone's like, yeah, pay me $500 retainer, 5,000, whatever, red flag. Like, you don't pay agents, you don't pay them at all. So that would be a scammer. There's a lot of scammers in publishing, unfortunately, and they're making it harder for the rest of us who are offering legitimate services. Another one is the same with publishers, right? Publishers, legitimate publishers, pay you to publish your book, not the other way around. You don't pay a publisher to publish your book. That's what's called a vanity press. And a lot of these publishers out there will contact you and say, "Hey, we saw, your book is out there. We want to publish it. We're going to charge you $5,000 or $10,000 to put your book together, to market it, to do all these things." And that is not what publishers are supposed to be doing. Publishers, like a real one, like Penguin, Simon and Schuster, right? They give you a contract and say, "We're going to pay you this much money for your book." They pay you, and they give you what are called royalties. So they'll usually like offer an advance, and then they'll give you royalties based on your book sales after you pay back the advance that they gave you. So let's be generous and say like you got a $50,000 book contract. So they're going to pay you $50,000 for your book because they think you're going to sell $500,000 worth of books, right? They're banking on that. So they're going to give you $50,000 contract. And of that $50,000, they're going to give you a $10,000 advance up front so you can finish writing the book. If this was with like a nonfiction book, nonfiction, you get the contract and then you finish writing it. Fiction, it's the other way around. Memoirs, too, finish writing, then get the contract. Anyhow, get in advance. That gets you going, it gets you starting, and then they give you the rest of the money or like another part of the money halfway through, and then the rest of the money at the end, right? So you have this $50,000. And then once that's paid back through book sales, then they start paying you royalties, right? So if they're asking you for money to design, edit, publish, market, that's a scam. They're not real publishers, they're vanity press. Now, that's different than what I do. What I do is offer self-publishing services, and I empower you to publish yourself through my services. If I wanted to publish your book through my press, I would offer you a contract, not charge you money for doing the design. Now, a lot of indie publishers can't offer huge contracts. I've seen some as small as 1,000, 5,000. Sometimes they can't offer any money. They offer, royalties only. Sometimes indie presses can only do cost sharing, which is where you pay a portion for like maybe the designer and a few things, but then they take on the cost of like the marketing and launching, editing, so things like that, right? So there's different ways to do that, but if you're talking to a publisher that's asking you for thousands of dollars for publishing services, I just want you to know that is a scam. Unless it's like someone like me who's like, "I'm going to design and publish your book through your own publishing company, and you're going to keep all of the money." I don't keep any money when I do those services for people. Like, that's not my book. I don't own it. You own everything. It's all in your name. You get the money. So that's where things are different between what I do and what a vanity press does. And also what my publishing company does. Because again, I want to be like a legitimate publisher. I don't want to be a vanity press. So I'm not asking people for money to do their books. I am hoping to offer people money to do their books. So, how do you make money though as a publisher? Well, a lot of indie publishers rely on, I mean, a lot of the newer indie publishers, honestly, I've been talking to some people and they're like, "Well, this is just my, part-time hobby. I'm not making any money. It's all self-funded. I'm paying all the costs out of pocket." And I think a lot of publishing houses have to start like that unless you're, you know, really good at getting grants and loans and know people who can do funding or have investors, things like that. From what I've talked to, it's a lot of grassroots stuff. Some people do fundraising or crowdfunding and that kind of thing. Um, I also, as far as myself goes, I offer my design and editing and publishing services. That's how I make money for people who are self-publishing. And then for the ones that people who I want to publish, I'm going to take on the cost of doing the design and editing and publishing for those books, right? Um, so and I mean, I've had people that are like, well, I want to share costs with you on that, which is awesome, but not everybody can do that. So it's just one of those things about being a new indie press that, with a lot of things you start out, you're just self-funding and you don't make a lot of money up front. But I do believe, honestly, as delusional as it sounds, that I'm going to be a major publisher one day along the lines of Hay House. Like I have that as a vision for myself as part of my quantum leap, part of my journey is like that's where I'm going to be before, you know, before too long. That's where I'm headed. And that's the things that I believe I can do so that I can help have a bigger impact on the world. I know the universe put you in my life too. Like it's pretty crazy, especially the way we met, Kyla. Like we met so long ago for those of you who are like, what are you talking about? We met when I was getting out of an abusive marriage and working at like a furniture store and had a pretty bad like a substance abuse addiction and alcoholism and real crazy time in my life. And Kyla's quite a bit younger than me, and we met working at this furniture store and have had so many like points in our life where we have just like it's been so synchronistic that we've, gotten in communication and work things together. So I'm really glad we're getting to work on your book right now. Okay. So with self-publishing, if you decide to self-publish, which again, I think for most people is a really good way to go. I mean, for a lot of reasons, which we can discuss. And I discuss a lot in all of my courses and in my book. But if you are self-publishing and you can only spend money on one thing, I recommend it's a professional book designer. So readers might not be like consciously aware of things like margins that are too small or fonts that are too big or like a back of the book that doesn't quite look like the other ones on the shelf. But their subconscious will clock that. And your credibility takes a hit when your book does not look like it's been professionally designed and published. I know that is true for myself, and that was not even after I was a book designer. That has been my whole life. I can tell, oh, this, even back before there was like Amazon, right? I could look at a book and just by the cover be like, this was made in somebody's garage. You can tell. You can tell, and everybody can tell, whether they consciously can tell or not. So, professional design sets you apart from all the other self-publishing authors because I'm sure you've seen a book that you're just like, ooh, who approved that? It does not look professional at all. I know I have way too many times. And I feel bad for some of those authors because they may have a beautiful message. It may be life-changing, paradigm shifting, world changing, but if it looks unprofessional, a lot of people aren't going to read it and you won't be able to get your message out there. So if you can only afford one thing, let it be a professional book designer for the interior and the cover. Doesn't have to be expensive, but just somebody that knows what they're doing. They do judge books by the cover. I definitely judge books by the cover. I do, 100%. And I will like die on that hill because it is so important to me as a reader to that the book looks like a professional book because I've read too many that were real bad. And usually the inside quality matches the outside quality from what I've seen. Because somebody who doesn't, at the risk of sounding like an elitist, somebody who doesn't value their work enough to put it in a nice package probably didn't value it enough to make sure it was easy to read and digest and have it properly edited and things like that. So, not to judge everything, but we do. We do judge books by their cover. We absolutely do. So, just hire a book designer. Okay. Launching. All right. My last few tips here is for launching. And it's pretty quick. My first thing is to throw a launch event. It doesn't matter if it's big or small, if you do a virtual or in-person event, if it's at a bar or a bookstore, but it's so worth it to celebrate your achievement with your closest supporters and signing autographs. Like that's the most amazing thing, the most amazing experience like no other is sitting down and autographing your own books at your own book launch party. Like that makes everything so worth it. That's that hug from your grandma that you haven't seen in 2 months, right? Like that is just the most epic moment. So have a launch party if you can in person. If not in person, a virtual event, at least maybe a get together with some people if you can't have a big $10,000 blowout like I did, had somebody invest in that for me, by the way. Um, so I just because it gives you something to look forward to, it gives you like an official date and something that people will remember as well. And you'll have memories of it too. You got pictures and autographs, all the things, right? Now, the second launching tip is build the hype before you're done writing. A lot of people will wait till after they're done and be like, okay, now I can talk about it because it's done. No, you have to talk about it before. Even if you're not directly talking about, I'm writing a book, start talking about the subject matter, right? Just be sharing stuff like that on your social media and not just on social media. There's, Patreon, there's Substack, there's Medium, there's all these other places that you can put your work and start building your audience as a writer so that when the book is released or when you start actually promoting the book itself, people are already kind of warmed up and prepared. They're like, oh, I know Melanie's a writer because she has her Substack. I've been following it forever. And now she's bringing us a book that's got all this cool stuff in it that she's been talking about for the last several months. I'm totally going to buy that. That's what people will think because they're already invested in what you're doing. Even if it's a free subscription like Substack. If they if that comes to your inbox, like you can't really get too much more personal than that besides a text message. So if people are inviting you into their inbox to read what you have to say, then they're probably going to be interested enough to buy your book, especially if you're writing about what you've been talking about the whole time. So with Kyla, like talking about the narcissistic abuse, talking about your story and what you went through within reason of what you feel is like safe, of course, because I know this is a very sensitive subject and has a lot of implications, but you can talk in general, maybe about like why women don't leave, right? Like that infographic you sent me and start telling one of those things at a time, right? So that when you're like, I'm writing this book about my story of surviving narcissistic abuse, you have an audience built up of people who are like, yeah, I went through that too. Now I want to read your story and see how you survived this. So that's a really, really great tip. Now, the final one is never stop launching. That, I would say, is the number one thing that separates from successful authors from those whose books fade into oblivion. Oh, thank you, Melanie. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I'm so glad it's been helpful. So keep talking about the book far after it's launched. And I would say that was my biggest mistake after I wrote my book and after my book launch. I was like, here it is. And then was like, okay, now I'm on to write my next one. I didn't spend nearly any time continuing my launch and talking about it after the book was out in the world and getting on podcasts and doing all those things. I really should have spent more time and more energy marketing it and selling it after it was in the world. And that's where I think a lot of people make that mistake. You think about like the biggest bestsellers, Mel Robbins, right? And whatever you feel about Mel Robbins, she had one of the biggest best-selling nonfiction books all of last year for like I think over 6 months was on the like number one on the bestsellers list. And she never stopped talking about that book. Everywhere. She was on podcasts for months and months and months and months solid. And that's why the book stayed relevant, stayed on the bestseller, because she never stopped talking about it. Never stopped talking about it. So don't stop launching. Once the book is there, then it's finally time to talk about it more. Don't do what I did, okay? So we have some more time for Q&A. If you have any questions about any part of the writing process, editing, publishing, planning, launching, I'm here to answer any questions. I know if you have to hop, that is okay too, but I want to be here to answer any questions that I have not answered so far in this call. So we make sure we address absolutely everything that you're wondering about. Take a little sip here. Give you guys a chance to write any questions in the chat. I'm so glad this has been helpful for you guys. I really wanted to make this something valuable. Again, that's not just like a woo-woo workshop where you come away with like, oh, I'm going to be an author. And then that fades away and you don't know what to do next. And you just like kind of stall and stop thinking about it and never do anything about it. I want you to come away with this from, I wanted you to come away with it. I wanted you to come away from this with some real grounded practical advice of next steps to take in your writing journey. So Kyla asked, have you ever kind of dealt with self-doubt during the writing? Like, how do you overcome the voice in your head that's saying this is a waste of time? So much, so much. And it's actually a big part of what I do in like my writing course and in my book. That's like one of the very foundational things that you want to do when you declare that you're an author. Your mind is going to start telling you all the reasons that it's not true. Because that's what our ego does to protect us. It's like, no, we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to put ourselves out there. We don't want people to judge us and hear our story. Let's stay safe where we are. You're not a real author. This is dumb. Nobody's going to read this. This is a waste of time. What are you even doing? You're no expert. All these things, right? It's our ego telling us this to keep us safe. So that's its job. So that we don't put ourselves out there, so that we don't feel vulnerable, so that we don't get attacked, right? Because those are all very real possibilities if we put our story out there. People can judge us. People can misunderstand us. You know, people might not even read it at all, which is like the worst. I mean, what's worse, like people reading it and hating it or people not reading it? Oh my God. Like, they're both pretty bad. And speaking from like having this happen with, I mean, just like threads, right? I had a post go viral on threads and had people personally attacking me. And then I've had so many posts that have just like no views, no comments, no attention at all. And sometimes those are harder than the ones where I'm getting 4,000 comments of people being hateful because it's like nobody fucking cares. God. But those are just things our mind is telling us, right? And it's not like telling yourself something different is going to automatically make it not true. It's not like you can just deny reality and be like, oh, it's fine. I'm going to be a bestseller and this is not a waste of time. You can tell yourself those things, but there still exist as possibilities, right? So, how do you deal with that? Well, what I like to do is an exercise where you like identify where those resistances are coming from. So, a lot of times we have like specific people who have told us your, your story is stupid. Nobody cares. Or you're going to, you're only going to hurt yourself by telling the story. I'm like thinking specifically of you because this is a very sensitive story, right? Or there's a million women just like you, like nobody cares. Nobody's going to read this, right? Or maybe it's even like, you didn't get really good grades in English class. That could be, for somebody. Or like for me, for example, like my dad told me that being a being a writer was the same thing as being a bum. And I took that personally. I really did. I was like, damn, like I don't want to be a bum. I want to be productive. So I got a creative writing degree and then went to go work at a newspaper because I needed a real job so I wasn't just a bum. And then I worked around writing for 20 years before I finally was like, you know what? I think I'm a writer. I think I'm supposed to be a writer, not just help everybody else write their books, maybe. And it took a lot of identity work to shift into that and be like, no, I am a writer. I'm an author. And that was all before I wrote that book, right? So that's the kind of work that you can do. Identify where that's coming from, and then, tell it to fuck off. Be like, that's not true. Fuck you. Okay? Like, I'm not going to listen to that story anymore. Now, there's more concrete exercises you can do. In my book, I talk about, writing down everything and, crumpling it up and throwing it away, and then write down all the reasons that only you can write this book. And that's a really good exercise too. So that's something you can do more concrete, but like, I kind of like the fuck off thing too. Just like, fuck off, Dad. I'm not a bum. And I wrote a book. I'm an author. I'm not a bum. It's weird how people around us are like, you can't be an artist or a writer, but someone like J.K. Rowling can. Like, why the fuck can't I, right? Anything about someone like J.K. Rowling, like they were literally just like a single mom trying to make ends meet. Why the fuck not you, right? You are absolutely just as capable of becoming a worldwide phenomenon bestseller. You are absolutely just as capable of affecting millions of people all over the world. If she can do it, you can do it. I want to call her they just to be like pedantic because she's so trans hater. Whatever they, whatever they do. Sorry. Um, but yeah, she who must not be named. I love it. I love it. But yeah, yeah, I would do that exercise on my book that's called Unlimit Yourself, where you just write down all the reasons that you're telling yourself you can't write the book, and then destroy that, and then make yourself a nice, beautiful list of why you are going to write this book, why you're the person who has to write this book, why it's so important and, you know, personal for you, and then hang that somewhere that you can see it every day and remind yourself when you're writing, this is why I'm writing this book. To make myself proud, to make my son proud, to help women who have been in this situation, to make some money, to be, to be free from the person who's hurt me, whatever it is. Write it all down and then hang it up. All right. Well, I again really appreciate you guys for being here today. This has been amazing. And I want to give you a gift for being here on the live call with me. So, yay, thank you, Carla. I'm like really glad you're able to be here. So your gift for being here, I know both of you actually have my writing course. So that was going to be for people who didn't have that yet. But what I do want to give you is I am going to be creating a publishing course upcoming very soon. It is going to cover everything about publishing that I've learned in self-publishing and traditional publishing from the moment your book is done until it is in people's hands. It's going to cover all of that. So I want to give you guys first access to my publishing course coming up. And I don't have it ready yet, but when the time comes, I know that you two will be getting that special access code that I'll be able to give you. So I'm guessing it'll be probably in September, because I want to finish my book and then I'm recording the course. But you guys will have first access to it, and I'm very excited that you are going to be like part of my launching crew for this next course I'm going to be doing. So, your future author self is standing by, waiting to meet you in your new timeline. And they're so grateful and so happy that you chose to be here today because this is the day that changed everything. You bought your ticket, you're going on your journey, and your future is ahead of you, this beautiful new timeline where you're a published author. So do all the work, hold the vision to stay on this trajectory and building the life of your dreams. And I'll see you in the future. Thank you. Thank you again so much for being here. I love you guys.